I was 23 when I spent a week at my grandparents' house in rural Maine, in an area so remote that cell service barely worked. The house sat surrounded by tall pines, far enough from town that the nights weren't just dark, they felt heavy. My grandparents were away visiting relatives. They asked me to watch the place, feed the cat, and make sure everything stayed locked up. I'd spent summers there growing up, so I didn't think twice. The first night, I slept in the upstairs guest room. Before bed, I noticed a blanket folded neatly on a small armchair by the window. I moved it to the foot of the bed without really thinking. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up. Not fully. Just enough to realize I was hearing something in the hallway. It wasn't footsteps, it was softer than that, like fabric dragging gently across the floor. The sound would start, pause, then start again, like whatever was out there moved in short bursts and stopped to listen. Then everything went silent. By morning, I convinced myself it was just an old house being an old house. Wood settling, pipes, wind, anything. The second night, I decided to pay attention. I put my phone on the dresser to charge, right in the center, and I lined the cord up in a specific way so I'd know if it moved. I also left my bedroom door slightly ajar because it got stuffy upstairs. Sometime after 2, I woke again. I heard a single creak in the hallway, like a floorboard giving under light weight. Then a faint sound, so quiet I almost thought I imagined it, like someone breathing carefully just outside the door. I stared at the crack of the doorway waiting for a shadow, and for a split second, the darkness shifted. Not a full silhouette, just the hallway getting darker as if something passed slowly by. Then nothing. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay still. A minute later, I realized my door was closed. I'd left it slightly open. I knew I had. I got up and opened it slowly. The hallway was empty. The stairs creaked like they always did. In the morning, I found my phone on the floor across the room. Not near the dresser. Across the room, against the wall, with the charging cable still plugged into the outlet. It didn't look like it had fallen. It looked placed. I stood there trying to make it make sense, and nothing did. Downstairs, the cat sat near the laundry room, staring into the darkness like it was watching someone. When I called it, it didn't move. By the third night, I was exhausted. I left the hallway light on because I needed something, anything that felt like control. I heard the soft dragging sound again, faint and slow, moving somewhere outside my room. Then the hallway went quiet, and I noticed a glow through my bedroom window. I pulled the curtain back just enough to look out. The neighbor's house, off to the side, through the trees, had an upstairs window lit up with a warm yellow light. It was steady, like a lamp had been turned on and left on. For a moment, I felt relief, like I wasn't the only one awake out there, like someone else had heard what I heard. I watched, waiting to see a shadow cross the window. Nothing moved. Then the light shut off suddenly as if someone flipped a switch. I barely slept after that. When my grandparents came home, I tried to keep it vague. I mentioned the noises, the weird feeling, the phone ending up across the room. Then I mentioned the neighbor's light. I told them I saw an upstairs window lit in the house next door in the middle of the night. They looked at each other, quick and tense. My grandmother asked me which window. I described it. My grandfather went quiet, then said, low and certain, "That house hasn't had anyone in it for years." I laughed once because I didn't know what else to do. "What do you mean?" I saw a light. My grandmother answered calmly, but her voice was different now. "The man who lived there moved away a long time ago, after his wife died." I asked, "Who lived there now?" My grandfather shook his head. "No one. The power was shut off. It's been closed up ever since. And I swear, the moment he said that, my stomach dropped harder than it had any night in that house. Because I could still picture the window, bright and warm, like someone had turned it on for a reason. Even now, I've never known exactly what happened that week. I only know what I heard. I only know where my phone ended up. And I only know I saw a light in a house that wasn't supposed to have electricity and wasn't supposed to have anyone inside. I was 11 when this started happening, back when I still lived with my parents in a small rural town. Our house was an old two-story place that always made normal house noises, creaks, pops, the occasional groan when the temperature changed. At the end of the upstairs hallway there was an attic door, the kind with a pull-down ladder, and my parents used the attic as storage for boxes, old clothes, and holiday decorations. The attic wasn't a finished room. It was just wood beams, insulation, and a floor you could walk on if you were careful. My dad kept the attic ladder latched shut because he didn't want me messing with it, and honestly, I didn't want to go up there anyway. Even in daylight, it felt dusty and strange. My bedroom was upstairs. My parents' room was upstairs too, right next to mine. The walls were thin enough that I could hear their voices sometimes, and I could definitely hear my dad's alarm in the morning. That's why what happened never made sense to me. It started one night when I woke up out of nowhere. I remember feeling confused, like I'd been pulled out of a dream. I looked at the glowing numbers on my little digital clock. 3 a.m. I lay there for a few seconds, trying to fall back asleep. Then I heard something above me. Not a bang. Not a crash. Something softer, like a slow scraping sound coming from the attic, directly over my ceiling. It was followed by silence. And then the scraping again, like whatever it was, moved in short bursts and stopped in between. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, completely still, trying to understand what I was hearing. My first thought was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a squirrel got into the attic. But it didn't sound like quick little feet. It sounded heavier than that, like something dragging slightly across wood. The sound stopped for a minute. Then I heard another noise, 3 dull taps, evenly spaced, like someone lightly knocking on a board. After that, silence again. I sat up in bed and listened, waiting for it to happen again. I could hear my own breathing and the faint hum of the house. From my parents' room, I could hear nothing at all. No movement, no talking, no reaction. I finally got out of bed and padded across the hall to their door. I stood there with my hand on the knob, debating whether to wake them up. I didn't want to get in trouble for being dramatic. I didn't want them to tell me it was just the house and send me back to bed. So I went back to my room and pulled the blankets up higher, trying to make myself feel safe. A few minutes later, the scraping sound returned. This time it was closer to the hallway side of my ceiling, like whatever was up there had moved across the attic. It paused, then started again. Slow, deliberate, as if it didn't want to make too much noise, but also didn't care if it did. I remember staring at my door, convinced I was about to see the knob turn. Nothing happened. The sound stayed above me. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep again, because the next thing I remember is waking up in the morning with sunlight coming through my curtains. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. At breakfast, I asked my parents if they'd heard anything in the attic last night. My mum looked at me like I was talking about the weather. My dad barely looked up from his coffee. They both said no. They told me I probably heard the house settling or the wind or maybe an animal outside. My dad said if something was really up there, the cat would have gone crazy. But I didn't feel better. I felt worse, because that meant I was the only one hearing it. And the strange part was, it happened again. Not every night, but often enough that I started dreading going to bed. I would wake up and check the clock, and it was almost always around the same time, right around 3 in the morning. Sometimes it was the scraping sound, like something shifting across the attic floor. Sometimes it was a faint creak followed by silence, like someone had put weight on one spot and then carefully lifted it. Once or twice I heard a sound like a soft thud, like something being set down gently. And once I heard what I can only describe as a short, quiet shuffle directly above the hallway, followed by those 3 taps again. I tried everything a scared kid tries. I slept with my lamp on, I slept with my head under the covers, I left a small toy on my dresser in a very specific position to see if it would move, because in my 11-year-old brain, that felt like a way to prove I wasn't imagining it. The toy never moved. The attic noises still happened. And every time I brought it up the next day, my parents said the same thing. They didn't hear anything, even though their bedroom was right next to mine, even though the attic was above both of our rooms. I started to wonder if the sound was somehow only over my room, like it followed me, like it waited until I was asleep and then started moving. I never told my friends because I knew how it would sound. I didn't even have the words for it. All I knew was that I would wake up at 3 in the morning, terrified, listening to something I couldn't see. Years later, when I was older, I asked my mum about it again. I asked her if she ever remembered me talking about the attic noises. She laughed softly and said she remembered. But she still swore she never heard a single thing. And that's honestly the part that still bothers me. I know what I heard, night after night. My parents, sleeping just a few feet away, never heard anything at all. Even now, I've never understood exactly what those sounds were. And I don't think I ever will.